Good evening and welcome to this special Faith Nation about Israel at war. I'm Jenna Browder.
From the CBN studio here in Washington, D.C., I'm John Jessup. Well, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency was founded back in 1948. UNRWA is supposed to oversee and provide humanitarian aid for Palestinian refugees.
Yet mounting evidence shows the agency is corrupted by its ties to terror group Hamas. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
The site at this bomb shelter has been called a massacre within a massacre. That day on October 7th, Hamas terrorists murdered 16 Israelis hiding in this bomb shelter after fleeing the Nova Music Festival. They also kidnapped several, including Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland. In addition to being with Hamas, the man leading that part of the massacre had another job.
Muhammad Abu Itiwi was a Nukhba commander in the El Burej battalion of Hamas's Central Camps Brigade. He has also been employed by UNRWA since July 2022.
You have employees of UNRWA who were leading the massacre.
A report from Amichai Chikali, Minister of Diaspora Affairs and Immigration, documents those employees who took part in the October 7th massacre. He tells CBN News Hamas's infiltration of the agency has been widespread.
The entire system, because Hamas is in power, so if you want to be an UNRWA employee with a very nice salary, you must be related to Hamas. So UNRWA employees in Gaza were mainly all Hamas militants, all Hamas civil organizations personnel, all the families of Hamas militant and members. If you're not connected to Hamas directly or indirectly, you cannot work in UNRWA in Gaza.
Evidence of this relationship is why the Knesset recently overwhelmingly passed a law that Israel divorce itself from UNRWA.
You have to understand again the spirit of the bill. We have nothing against international community, against foreigners, against the idea of humanitarian aid. This is what Israel is providing. It's about the fact that UNRWA participated in the massacre of the 7th of October.
After the vote, UNRWA claimed the law would be disastrous.
Today, millions of Palestinian refugees fear that the public services on which their lives depend will soon disappear. They fear that their children will be deprived of education, that illnesses will go untreated, and that social support will stop. 17,000 UNRWA personnel in the occupied Palestinian territory fear that they will lose their employment. The entire population of Gaza fears that their only remaining lifeline will be cut.
Legislation co-author Boaz Bismuth disputes those claims.
There will not be a vacuum. It's not because, they were helping yesterday, someone else cannot do the job tomorrow. The job will be done. Because I will ask you the same thing in Gaza. You can tell me, Hamas is reigning in Gaza. You kick them away, so all control. Someone else. It's as easy as that. And it will be found. Other people can do it, and will do it beautifully without being terrorists.
Chikali's report cites how UNRWA has perpetuated Palestinian refugees for generations.
The fact that we have an entity solely for Palestinian refugees that can inherit this status to their kids, grandchildren, and grandchildren, creating more and more refugees every year. And then you have the rest of the world, UNHCR, a refugees entity that is for any other refugees in Africa or Asia or Haiti, it doesn't matter.
His report contrasts UNRWA and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR. Overseeing 5.9 million refugees, UNRWA employed 30,000 workers in 2023. That same year, UNHCR employed 18,000 while overseeing 59 million refugees worldwide. Chikali says the difference goes even deeper.
Because the UNHCR is not an ideological entity related with the war against the state of Israel. And UNRWA is part of a war. It's a war. It's a war machine. It was designated to train the Palestinian younger generation for jihad. That is the reality. And also when you go physically and you go and you see in schools of UNRWA, in so many cases, beneath the schools you have tunnels. Within the schools you have ammunitions and missiles and weapons.
It's why many in Israel want UNRWA abolished and support UNHCR to take its place. But in a statement, UNHCR tells CBN News, as we with other UN agencies have previously warned, UNRWA is the only entity with the capacity to deliver the scale and breadth of assistance that 2.2 million people in Gaza and millions of other Palestinians in the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan need. As the UN Secretary General has stated, there is no alternative to UNRWA. Yet critics cite that UNRWA's most lasting and infamous legacy is its education system. Many principals of UNRWA schools in Gaza were also Hamas members. Chickley says it takes a village to raise a terrorist and that UNRWA helped teach a genocidal ideology.
This is the Palestinian ideology, this is UNRWA ideology, and by the way, it's also very, very important to understand the jihadist ideology, to train the kids to hate, anti-Semitism, to teach them that the war against the Jews and killing the Jews, that is the most important thing on earth. And this is also a part of what we saw on October 7th.
Under the Biden administration in 2023, the U.S. became UNRWA's largest donor. In Donald Trump's first administration, he ended the agency's funding. Most here hope when he takes office in January that he acts quickly to do so again. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, a mission to preserve the memories of Israelis who survived the October 7th terror attack for the sake of history.
Welcome back. While the future of the Middle East is at a tipping point, Israel is collecting the testimonies of all those kidnapped on October 7th.
Their first-hand accounts are being filmed and eventually will be kept in the National Archives. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem.
Hamas kidnapped Mirav Tal and also took the body of her long-term partner Yaakov Tal on October 7th.
I saw Yahya outside the house, sitting on his knees, and two terrorists were holding him by his sides. He was with his back to me. They were holding weapons, and he yelled at me, "I'm going to die." And I'm on a Vespa, and I told him, "Don't resist." One who was sitting was holding a knife to my neck. They brought me down from the Vespa. Someone hits me on the head. I almost lost consciousness. I was getting ready to take a shower. Then he told me, "You take a shower. When you finish, you don't wear your clothes. I'm coming to check you out if you have a chip in your body."
That's just one of dozens of testimonies that's part of the government press office project.
The GPO took footage and testimonies from all the hostages that arrived in the first period a few months ago, to make sure that, first of all, the foreign media will exactly know what is going on in Hamas horrible activities that they do in the jails, but also for the next generation, that people are ignoring, people forgotten.
GPO Director Nitzan Chen stresses the importance of recording the personal first-hand stories for documentation and authenticity.
So just imagine if even today, 6 months after the massacre, some people, even the Secretary of the UN denied that there was abuse against women at the jail. Just imagine what will happen 10 years from now. People will ignore, deny that there was some rape in October 7th, there was murder in October 7th. Therefore, the testimonies are very, very important for those days and next generation as well.
Journalists met some participants during a preview of the film, which will eventually be stored in the National Archives.
There were shouts of Jew in Arabic. They broke in screaming and shooting, bullet marks on the door. We understood my husband was shot. He was lying on the floor with his hands up. This was all in front of our eyes.
At Kfar Aza, terrorists abducted Chen Goldstein Almog and 3 of her children. They also murdered her husband and oldest daughter.
Then I ran to check on Yam, and I see that she was shot in the face, and I just saw this for a few seconds. It was a shocking sight. Something got opened right here, and blood was coming out of her head. Such a convulsion. She was half passed out. I was simply stunned, in shock, and I was asking myself, is what I'm seeing right now really happening?
Malki Shem Tov is the father of 21-year-old Omer, still a hostage after being kidnapped from the Nova Festival.
I saw him already more than 7 months. I terribly miss him. And if he hear me, I want to tell him that we do everything to bring him back home. Him and all the other hostages. Omer, just wait for us.
70-year-old Louis Har, kidnapped along with his friend Fernando Simon Marman, has a different story. The IDF rescued them in February.
Suddenly, I heard boom, and then wild shooting began, and someone grabbed my leg, pulled me down, and said, "Put your head down." He said, "Luis, we are the IDF. The IDF. We came to take you home." From that moment, that's it. I was in their hands. It gave me so much confidence.
Louis told CBN News the most important priority is to bring the hostages home.
We didn't lose our hope, and I hope that no one here loses his hope, because this is the last thing that needs to happen. We need to be strong in order to do everything to bring the hostages home.
He says being in captivity convinced him that belief in coexistence just is impossible.
Many of the captors said to me, they don't think we should be here. There shouldn't be a land of Israel. There should only be Palestine. That says that we don't have a partner for peace because they teach their children this from the time they're born. They only value hatred, to buy a weapon, and to kill the Jews. That's what they know.
Moshe Or's brother, Avi Natan, was kidnapped along with his girlfriend, Noah Argamani, whose mother has terminal brain cancer. Moshe hopes the free world will pressure Hamas in any way possible to free the hostages, because not doing so sends a dangerous message.
What will the terrorists all over the world will see and learn? They will learn that by taking hostages, civilians hostages, they can have benefits or earn something in the political field. Imagine yourself what will happen in terrorists in the USA. They will try, okay, if they will want to get something in the political field, they will take hostages.
With Israeli hostages still in Hamas captivity, the issue remains a top priority for Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The roots of terror in the Middle East. We explain the ideology that hastened the creation of Hamas. That and more when Faith Nation returns. More than a year in, Israel is still reeling from October 7th. The ideological roots of Hamas's massacre are found inside the group's charter.
CBN's Dale Hurd reports that the document is the terror group's blueprint for the ultimate destruction of Israel.
No one who has read the Hamas charter should be surprised by the slaughter that took place October 7. Created at the terror group's founding, it states that Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it.
Genocide of Jews.
Jonathan Conricus is a former IDF spokesman and a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
The Hamas charter is a charter to perform genocide against Israelis and to annihilate the state of Israel as we know it.
It's full of references to the destruction of Israel.
Hillel Frisch is a senior researcher at the Jerusalem Institute for Security and Strategy.
The document has one very specific purpose, and that is to call for the destruction of the state of Israel, to organize all Muslims for that purpose, and create a military terrorist force.
An offshoot of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, the name Hamas is an Arabic acronym for Islamic Resistance Movement. Its original charter reads like something written in Nazi Germany. Article 22 says of Jews, with their money they took control of the world media, news agencies, the press, publishing houses, broadcasting stations, and others. The document blames Jews for the French and Communist revolutions, World Wars I and II, and states Jews created the United Nations to enable them to rule the world. There is no war going on anywhere, the document reads, without having Jews' finger in it. The charter even blames Jews for the creation of the Rotary and Lions clubs, which Hamas apparently sees as sinister forces. The document also quotes from the Quran and from a Muslim hadith. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." Hamas issued a revised charter in 2017, which softened some of the original's violent and anti-Semitic rhetoric. However, Conriquez says the October 7th massacre exposed the revised charter as a fraud.
All that was a smokescreen, and Hamas very cleverly misled Israeli decision makers until they revealed what their real intentions were, and they did that on October the 7th.
Article 13 in the original charter rejects any negotiated settlement and says the only solution for the Palestinian question is jihad, holy war. Frisch says the dilemma over negotiating with Hamas is that it would likely allow the group to remain in power.
And within 2-3 years, they'll be exactly at the same point as they were on October 6th, the day before the slaughter.
Hopefully, in the future, there will be peace to be made with the Palestinians. Many Israelis want to make peace with the Palestinians. Israel has tried, but there's no peace to be made with Hamas.
That's because the Hamas charter forbids peace until Israel is destroyed. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, the future of Gaza after Hamas. Experts reveal a plan that could bring lasting peace and prosperity to the area. Well, while the Biden administration and the international community continue to push for a ceasefire in Gaza, one roadblock is how to create a new government without terrorists gaining control.
A group of Israeli lawyers are proposing a plan they believe can bring lasting security for Israel and the people of Gaza. CBN's Julie Stahl explains.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is insisting Hamas be destroyed by the end of the war. Others believe the priority is a peace deal and that Gaza can be dealt with later.
It's very clear to everyone who's been paying attention that the situation in Gaza is untenable. You have a death cult of jihadist terrorists who literally wake up in the morning every day and try to figure out a way to bypass your defense mechanisms and to find a way to finally destroy you and kill and rape and destroy the state of Israel.
Speaking to CBN News during a seminar on the war, attorney Yifa Sigal with the Israel Defense and Security Forum says October 7th serves as a prime example of what to expect if any remnant of Hamas leadership continues in Gaza.
They will do it again, given the chance. So it's very clear that we have to not repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We can't allow them to remain in power and then plan again for the next opportunity that they have to do another October 7th or, God forbid, something even worse than that.
Sigal also argues that the Palestinian Authority should not have a leadership role.
What we have created at the end of the day is a corrupt entity. Also, from day one, they've been funding terrorism, they've been inciting to terrorism, they've been paying rewards and stipends to terrorists and their families. It's all over the place. It's in every platform, in every school book. All they talk about is the end of Israel and the destruction of the Jewish state and the killing of Jews.
She and other attorneys searched cases from the last century to find any success in overcoming what she called a crazy homicidal society that hates your guts.
So it didn't work in Afghanistan, and it didn't work in Iraq, and it didn't work in many other places, but it did work in Imperial Japan and in Nazi Germany. Within a few years, you see Germany, at least Western Germany, went back into being a very positive neighbor in Europe, a prosperous economy.
Sigal's group, along with the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, came up with the Gaza Security and Recovery Program, which has 4 main principles.
First one is that Israel must have full military control over the Gaza Strip. Full military control. Because if we are there, we can prevent them from building terror tunnels, from building more rockets and factories and everything that we have seen.
For decades, Israel had a clear presence in the Gaza Strip as thousands of Israelis lived in communities there. After the 2005 Israeli withdrawal, however, the Palestinian Authority, followed by Hamas, had free reign over the region.
The second thing would be to make sure that we de-radicalize the Palestinian society in Gaza. And so we have to look at what are the engines of indoctrination in the Palestinian society. So first of all, it's the schools, right? It's the curriculum, it's the teachers, it's all the content, it's the mosques, everything that is being taught, under the auspices of the, radical Islamist ideology in the mosque.
She says it would be similar to the Marshall Plan implemented by the Allied powers after World War II in Nazi Germany and Japan.
They completely replaced a lot of that content, brought teachers and experts from outside and incorporated that into a new kind of system. And so that has to be a very important fundamental pillar of the new plan for the day after.
The third principle would be to break up control of the Gaza Strip.
Let's divide the Gaza Strip into 5, 6, 7, or 8 different districts, local governments, and then, if you need to replace somebody, then you can.
The last point would be putting conditions on international aid and support.
So there are a list of benchmarks that were suggested: cooperation, economical cooperation, social cooperation, getting rid of terror contact, the de-radicalization program. And then if you do better with that, you get more international aid support, infrastructure, money coming in.
Sigal believes following this plan would enable those local governments meeting that criteria to build up their districts, while those supporting terror would not receive any outside funding to grow or improve infrastructure. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And that is going to do it for Faith Nation.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.